Economic Development Commission to order. And the first item on the agenda is to have a roll call. So like I do, I will go down our list of names, and if you're here for the record, please say here. I'm Dave Hammond, I'm here. Kevin Bowdler.
I'm here.
Jim Lathrop.
Here.
Susan Lane.
Here.
And if everyone could mute back up again once they've spoken, because that seems to successfully eliminate the echo. Rich Balistraki.
I am here.
Yep. Dan McFadden.
I'm here.
Bill Hobbs. Hey, Bill's not here. Virginia Abernathy is here. Oh, she's going to answer.
I'm here. I'm here.
Very good. Pete Robinson.
Here.
Yep. John Godin.
I'm here.
Chris Donahue. No, Chris. Colin Hagan, I know, is not going to make it. He had something come up. Okay, so we do a quorum. The second item after the roll call is to approve the minutes of the prior meeting. That was on January 12th, 2021. That meeting consisted of the EDC was undertook an exercise to refresh our project list. So we reviewed the different ideas for projects that we could possibly the ability to make the biggest impact or positive impact for the town. And our previous list that we've been acting on had been in effect for like over a year and a half. So it was time to refresh that list. Some things we actually had accomplished. Some things have become more important that we wanted to add. So we had a prioritization exercise. All the members sent their votes to me, which I consolidated, and that was sent out as a table included in today's agenda. So with that, there weren't any decisions made from that meeting. It was really a planning meeting. So with that, I would ask if there's a motion to approve and a second.
So moved.
So that was Pete.
Second.
And the second was
Rich.
who? Rich?
Yep.
Okay. And are there any other comments on those minutes? I mean, we'll get to commenting shortly as we look over the projects and how they came out. Okay. Very good. Okay, so I think today, so the agenda for today consists solely of reviewing this list and then making an effort to, and agreeing what our priorities are, and then making an effort to start to kick off some of these initiatives. And to do that, I'd like to, so what we did when we asked for the votes was everybody provided their level of interest for being a team leader if we had a sub-team or subcommittee to drive the particular action forward. And if a member was interested in being a team member of that subcommittee. So I want to thank all the EDC members for humoring me on that request, and we really got a really good response, and it was really interesting to see where people's passions lied and where they were willing to invest their time and energy towards, trying to accomplish some of these things, which, and a number of them aren't, they're not slam dunks. They're not easy. So thank you for that. So as part of this meeting, what I'd like to do once we agree, the top, let's say 10 initiatives, is see if there's a team leader and then discuss how that team leader might actually launch the project. And I have some ideas for that, which include, a simple charter. And, I won't be coy. I borrow some of my practices and processes from my experience at Pfizer, where we had what we call limited duration teams, and each team had a charter. And the value of the charter was to really be clear about what the goals for the sub-team were, we call them limited duration teams, but what the goals were, what the specific deliverables were, and most importantly, that it be time-bound so that we have, an active timeline, and that can be used by the sub-team and then reported back on at these EDC meetings. So the model would be sub-teams would meet independent of the EDC, progress work according to their charter, their work plan, if you will, just and it won't be like it wouldn't be a corporate version where you're doing more signing on the dotted line. We are a volunteer group, but just a way to kind of structure our approach and hopefully just continue to inch the ball forward down the field, more like Kansas City rather than Tampa Bay. And so we can talk about that, and I can send out a charter once we template that we could use, and we'll see how that goes. So what I did was, if you guys, with reference to the spreadsheet that was included with the agenda and listed all the initiatives we voted for, if I look at the top 10 and the total column is color coded. So something that was, I didn't use, if it was hot, I didn't use red. If it was popular, I used green. And so and those numbers in the total column may not make a lot of sense, but what I needed to do was use a weighting methodology, because not every priority got the same number of votes. So, I couldn't have, we didn't want a situation where one project had one vote, and so that became the most popular. So it was weighted based on the number of votes that the particular project received, as well as the priority number. So the lower the priority, if it was number one priority, for example, the better chance it had of being green. And then if there was a lot of votes, the better chance it had. So with that, the circus lot acquisition came out number 1. The comprehensive zoning update was number 2. Number 3 was the Pawcatuck River Greenway, and that we've called that phase 1. So that's the section between Donahue Park and Route 1. Number 4 was TC80. That came up in our meeting, where there was considerable interest and recognition that there's a lot of untapped potential for the TC80 area off of exit 90, that we haven't nearly tapped into what the economic potential is for that area. Number 5 was finishing the housing strategy. That one we should be able to march along to the finish line without a specific sub-team, because Don Poland is really, and the Department of Planning are so heavily involved in making that happen. I think we can be comfortable kind of sitting a little bit more on the sideline with that. The sixth one was what? Sorry, the sixth one was the pedestrian bridge in Pawcatuck. And number 7 was unstick the Doll oil lot. That's the one right next to the circus lot. So there's some synergy between that and the number 1 selection, which was circus lot. Number 8 was the Mechanic Street Mill. So, I think that's really encouraging to see that there's a lot of interest in unsticking those. And even though they only got 3 votes, 2 of them were number 1. So that's why that ended up higher on the list. Number 9 is the stuck property analysis. And that's it's sort of almost an umbrella that includes things like the thread mill, which came out as a tie in number 10, the thread mill south portion that is, and the Mechanic Street Mill. So there's some overlap there and synergy with our efforts. They're complementary. And then also tied for the 10th one was the Pawcatuck Streetscape. So again, I think the strong themes here are, some town-wide initiatives, which include the housing strategy, which we've been heavily invested in, the comprehensive zoning update, which we understand is kind of a linchpin towards making things easier for developers to come in and propose projects, and the stuck property analysis, which would really benefit everything. But then also a strong theme for Exit 90, and also then for downtown Pawcatuck projects, which we've been really focused on. So with that, what I'd like to do is pause and just have anybody offer any, so I would propose that those 11 become our new list. And that doesn't mean that we don't work on anything else on this list. And I'll provide an example. I had, along with Susan and Danielle, had a telephone conversation with Eastern Connecticut Land Bank with regards to how we might use the land bank tool to get the Stillman environmental assessment accomplished, and through grants. So, that's something I would be willing to continue to pursue as a solo project. And that's just an example. So I think if somebody has passion for one of these other areas, for example, Exit 92, which didn't make the top 11, we should find a way to pursue that. Okay, so with that, that's enough of me. And for that, I'd like to do a round where folks can offer any comments to the way the orders came out. If anything, hey, Chris Donahue. So for the record, Chris Donahue has just joined the meeting. Chris, what we've done is we've walked through the top 11 items on the prioritization list, which was sent as part of the agenda that went out. So hopefully you can be looking at that because it's going to be what we end up talking about today.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I guess right at this point, well, let's do one round. I'll call names and any comments with regards to the priorities and how we might best move forward. So I'm going to start at the top of my list, which is part of the letterhead of our C letterhead. So that's it's not alphabetical. It's just who happens to be where. So the first one's Kevin Bowdler. Not hearing? Kevin, not hearing you. All right, we'll go on to the next one. Kevin's not connected. Jim.
Just a few comments. I think it's some great projects. The
just going down comprehensive zoning update, I think the most important thing we can do is really understand our scope on that. Because the comprehensive zoning to update is a lot of man hours of work to what will be our scope on that. And then I think, though, saying that, we can add a lot of input on EDC for some of the things we've seen over the years that need to be addressed. Housing strategy, affordable housing plan is kind of on autopilot. I'm not sure how much it's certainly going to be done before the end of the year, I would think, Dave.
Yep.
That would be a shortish one.
Yep.
Stuck property analysis, that's a great project. C80, I think there's a couple that could be logically combined, maybe to make less projects. The Mechanic Street Mills and the Thread Mill South, geographically, right across the street from each other, some of the same issues. The Cottrell Mill is about 90% occupied right now, and then there's kind of an ownership, change of ownership issue on the other side, on the Yardney side. So I think those could maybe be logically combined. The Circus Lot acquisition and the Unstick Doll Oil Lot seem to be a logical combination of a group, as does perhaps the Pawcatuck River Greenway and the Streetscape. The engineering design of the bridge really is a separate type of it's really a separate type of exercise that it's different in nature. So those are just my thoughts if we wanted to take 11 projects and make it a 7 or 8. Just a thought.
Yep. No, that's good, Jim. I definitely think we can combine efforts for some of those because they're interrelated. Circus Lot and Doll Lot being adjacent to one another for sure, and then the mill buildings can be similar approaches, so we could just leverage the efforts. Thanks, Jim. Suzanne.
Sorry about that. Okay, so what I was thinking, Jim had a good point of combining some of these. If we can have overlap of people who are involved with those different projects, that would be the smart thing to do, so that I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. The Circus Lot and the Greenway and the Pedestrian Bridge, the people who are on those different projects, if they can overlap somehow, the information can be shared and probably move forward a little faster that way.
Yep. Agree.
And then, the pandemic thing is sort of timely, but Cullen isn't here. We should, probably address that earlier than later to help.
Yeah, so Suzanne, I think that's a great example of how an independent, or in this case, maybe a tag team, just because it's not on the top 10. I know, have you met with Danielle? I know Suzanne has already had some, connection with Danielle and offer some ideas for, that's fantastic that if the EDC can support one-off needs by town hall, that's a great contribution. So
I'm meeting with Danielle tomorrow morning at 10, and Susan's on the call, and we'll be looking at the survey that had gone out, and I think that definitely is going to tie in with what's happening with the pandemic and businesses that are struggling. So we'll see how that conversation goes tomorrow. and what we can do to move ourselves forward.
Yep. So I think that's fantastic, and thank you so much for offering to support the town in that way with something that you're, expert in. There's some other examples of that. We'll get to them. Where some of these items, I mentioned Stillman Mill for myself, but then pandemic for Suzanne, and there's some others that we'll talk about as we go through the list, that they may not be a project that involves a larger group. It might be more focused by individual effort. Suzanne, was that it?
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin, I'll come back to you last and give you plenty of time to get yourself sorted out there. So, Rich.
I think that, obviously there's a lot of great ideas on the list. I agree with Jim that, I think especially with the mills, kind of grouping those together. But one thing that I was thinking about is maybe a next step after this, after, there's some meetings about for each individual initiative, it might be helpful just to kind of establish some timeframes for some of these, just to get an idea of, I think for some of them, there might be a certain level of momentum that we can capitalize on or things like that, and kind of look for opportunities to make some incremental progress towards some of them. But I think if we somehow break these into, smaller chunks and try to look at a timeline on, what seems reasonable to accomplish for some of them, I think that might help, prioritize some of it as well.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was speaking to on the charter, Rich. So thanks. I'm going to take that as positive input towards following that process, which I'd like to try. So thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Dan?
Sorry about the other phone. I don't know. I think that's a good list. I think these are all things we've identified. Obviously, what we want to do. I do agree. I really like your charter idea. Some of these projects will obviously take more than or several years to do if we ever get there. But if we can have a ironclad plan for what we think we can accomplish on that for this year, some of them obviously will make more progress than others. But I think that would be really valuable in terms of moving things along and keeping things going from year to year.
Yep. And Dan, just, I know you spoke out last month on, thinking maritime and marinas, and of course with the seaport linkage, that makes a ton of sense. Now that one didn't come out as a top vote getter, although Rich was really, Rich was pretty passionate about that also. So I think that could be another example where, if maybe it's a smaller elephant to take bites out of, but if you and Rich put your heads together and had an idea or two and wanted to pursue it, we should do that.
Okay, yeah, and I think we need to have some conversations with many other people to see what their concerns are.
Yeah.
And I know I owe Kevin an article on this very subject, so I will be making some calls very soon to get that all done. But yeah, I think it's obviously an important sector of our local economy. We just need to keep an eye on and identify what they need help with.
And we had a community conversation. I'm not sure if it was before you joined, Dan, or maybe it happened right when you first started and you didn't really follow it, but we had a community conversation with marina owners. So Kevin collected a list of, a couple of dozen. It's amazing how many different marinas, some of them smaller, are located in Stonington. And we did just that. We sat down and talked. And what are your concerns? What's preventing you from being more successful? And so I think it's definitely worth having a revisit of that. And contemporizing those concerns. I know being in a floodplain is a big, big issue for marinas, and how do they actually, build any facilities with the way the regulations are.
Yeah, Kevin or David, are those comments available in some form? Are there notes from this that somebody can?
Yeah, there will be, Dan, and I've got a list of all the marinas and I've got their contact details as well. So maybe you could do another poll or something and find out what's on there. A number of the issues were more state and federal,
Yeah.
but some of them have actually been addressed, like the sales tax on boats in Connecticut, the price of fuel for boats and marinas. So some of those have come down in the last couple of years, which they were griping about.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Virginia.
Hi, I just arrived at home, so I'm no longer driving. I do have a comment. Your list is great. I'm excited about it. I would like to continue to use this platform, meeting platforms. I can attend some of the subcommittees this year. Is that possible for me to do that?
Absolutely.
In other words, last year or last couple of years through the EDC, we've had a lot of these subcommittees meet during the morning time or during the day, and I work, so I can absolutely make time during my day to attend, but I'd have to use this platform.
Yeah, so if you're working remote and you're at home and can carve out some time for a WebEx subcommittee meeting, you're saying that would work for you.
It does. I am not working remotely. I am working on site. So, but I am allowed to take some time and, maybe attend some of these meetings. So I would love to be more proactive and more active in the subcommittees this time around.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Beautiful.
Good. Thank you.
And while we're on the topic of Virginia, Danielle was working on putting together some testimony for, I can't even describe it without looking at it, but it's, up in Hartford, it's some bill or something, I guess. And she was
tourism bill, to add some additional room tax. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to use this list and look at the cultural district vote. And I can't remember if I copied Pete on this or not, but both Dan and I kind of used this list as reference to say, can you help Danielle? And both Virginia and Dan provided input to Danielle for that testimony. And so thank you guys. Again, I mean, that's great for you to contribute, but it also accrues to, what the EDC can do and helps our whole group gain, recognition and stature within the town. So thanks very much for doing that. And while I'm on the cultural district, and when we come to Pete, because he actually, and Pete's next, so he can speak to this, Pete rated cultural district as #1. Now, coincidentally, and right when COVID hit, we were going to have Wendy Burry come and talk to us, who heads up the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural District, and she was going to talk to us about establishing cultural district in Stonington and how we might go about doing that. And the pandemic, we had it all lined up. We had LaGrua rented and everything, and the pandemic put the kibosh on that. So coincidentally, just today, Wendy just wrote back to me and said, do we want to try to get started on that again? So again, I think this is another example. This is a low cost one, resource demand type effort on the cultural district. Particularly if somebody like Pete says, I'd really like to focus on this one as an individual effort, but I'd like to honor Wendy's request and have the EDC get that community conversation we were going to have, where we would invite members of the creative entities in town to get together and talk about what a cultural district could mean for them and how we might start it. So even though that one's not one of our top 10, I think that's another area where the EDC can still contribute and make something happen. And in particular, and Pete can comment on this, because I know Pete's a very good musician, and it has very much a creative side. And if this is a particular interest to Pete, then by all means, we should devote some time and energy to it. So with that setup, I guess, Pete, any other comments on this list?
No, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I mean, it is a personal interest of mine. That's why I chose it number one. But I certainly see the value of going through the top 10 list, and I think in general the top 10 makes sense. I guess my only comment, even though I'm happy to pursue my number one on a separate basis, is 10 like the appropriate number. When is it maybe too many? I mean, I'm just putting it out there. So, but other than that, I think it looks good to me. So,
Yep. Yeah, I don't know what the right number is. I think, we had 11 on our last year's list, and I think it kind of like the ones that really we could get traction on kind of bubble to the top, and the others that we couldn't naturally sank to the bottom. So I suspect the same thing will happen here. Pete, when I write back to Wendy, what I'm going to do is CC you on that. Do you know Wendy?
yep, I do.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And I'll just suggest that, yes, we want to revisit that, and Pete's going to be kind of the lead, the point person on that, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, excellent. All right, John.
Good process, Dave. And I can't wait to see what your charter template looks like, because I'm obviously familiar with my own charter templates from GE. I think the interesting thing, if I look at mine, I'm surprised that Unstick Exit 92 didn't rank very high, and it was one of my top ones. My guess is there might be history there I'm not aware of, or I'm just naive on Exit 92. I mean, I drove by the property 3 times in the last week, and there's a lot of undeveloped land there. That being said, you could consolidate that in the Unstuck property project in and of itself if you wanted to.
Yep.
And, I view it as a sales job, right, for our town to develop properties that are undeveloped. So, and that's kind of the passion I have when I bring to this type of work. But I think the process is great. I think you can do some consolidation on some of these. And I think the top 10 list does bring out what, for the most part, what seems to be people's passions or what they think is the priority. That's all I have.
Okay, great comments. Thanks, John. And yeah, I agree with you on the Exit 92. And maybe a first step is, as part of the stuck property analysis is we have that sorted sort of by location to really take a look at what it would take to unstick Exit 92. And that might suggest if we should devote more effort. I mean, there was 6 people voted for it. So there was interest. I know I voted for it as number 6, probably because I see the potential there, as you mentioned. And, I think if we get stuck on some other ones, activity starts to happen on Exit 92, magically that one could bubble up into our list.
Dave, Exit 90, that whole Route 2 corridor in general, if you look at the zoning on it, it's a barrier. So, I mean, there's some interesting stuff in that project.
Yep.
The cultural district project, could that be launched in that area? That's, that could be an interesting concept, Pete.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Suzanne. We'll have to see what Wendy says. I tend to think, so what that's intended for is if there's like a Bank Street in New London where all the cultural entities are located, whether it's, museums, performance spaces, or art shops and galleries and stuff like that. It's like a district, a geographical actual district. So where we have in Stonington, we've got a glass blower in Mystic, and then we've got the Velvet Mill and the Borough, and, all kind of scattered around, and Mystic not worked and so on. So how do we kind of create a district for that such that it can be marketed to the outside world? I think that's the challenge. So, but we'll let Wendy help us with that and see if there's some other options. All right. Last to provide some input, Chris.
Yeah, so I didn't really get a chance to look at that list yet. I tried pulling it up on my email, but I couldn't get it. But yeah, no, I like the idea of consolidating some stuff, especially in the same areas. I feel like that can be some good synergistic work moving the needle forward. So, I mean, other than that, I'm not sure where the top 10 list ended up, but there was some good projects in all the different choices that I saw.
Okay, so Chris, you voted for looks like 7 in total, and then you stopped. So you didn't come up with 8, 9, and 10. But your number 1 was the Pedestrian Bridge. That one is in the top 10. You also voted for the Pawcatuck Streetscape. That was in a top 10. And it looks like, and then the Unstick the Doyle lot, Unstick the Doll lot was your number 2, and that one was in the top 10. And that's kind of, we acknowledge that's sort of married with the Circus lot, which was the number 1 for everyone. So I think there's a lot of things in the top 10 that you have interest in. I know you didn't check off the Greenway because we had a frustrating go of it a year and plus ago, and several of us felt those frustrations.
You're talking about the Riverwalk?
The Riverwalk, yeah, and several of us felt those frustrations. But that, Chris, so just so you know, that actually came out as
one
the third priority.
The only reason I didn't check that is because I was kind of confused when I was reading the email. I thought that there was just a halt on that. That's the only reason I didn't check that. That is actually a top priority of mine.
Yeah. So I figured that, and so that is on our list. So that would give you the opportunity to get involved. We just have to figure out the path forward on that.
Yeah.
So that, I mentioned having a charter, or really kind of a project plan, and others spoke about it too, where you'd have a project description. What are the time phase deliverables in discrete chunks? That's what we need to start out with that, to try to hit the reset button and get going on that again. It's not funded, but for everybody's, on this list, you can see what is called out in the capital investment project budget request that the Department of Planning put forward, and the Pawcatuck River Greenway, or the Riverwalk, and it's called Phase 1, which would be the Donahue Park to Route 1 connection. That's what the SIP is earmarked for. No funding, but if it gets visibility to the community, and it gives us an opportunity. I think this is what I wrote to you in an email, Chris, with regarding to writing an article for the EDC, is how can we, and that can be a step 1 too. How do we create a vision that we can get the community excited about before we get too far down the road on actual plans? And get into, dig ourselves into a hole like what happened the first time around. So, I know I'm going to put like a mark under Chris for Riverwalk. I'm going to put 1A there. So that's, that I'm noting that as a high priority for you.
Got it. Thanks.
All right. Kevin, sorry, coming back to Kevin on this. Any comments before we move on?
No, so everyone's covered everything which I would have talked about. So what I recommend we do now, Dave, is to consolidate, have a discussion about which ones we consolidate, because some are very clear to me we should combine. but there's a couple of others I'm not too sure. But I think if we do that step, and then we can allocate leaders and subcommittees.
Okay, do you want to start the discussion on what might, so we already talked about combining the two mill projects, combining the circus lot and the doll lot, and the Greenway and the Streetscape. Did you have others?
So, I heard under the circus. So I think the circus lot and the Dale oil lot absolutely have to be together. I think I heard someone mention maybe we should have the stuck property list in there as well. My gut feel is maybe separate out the stuck property list to be everything in town other than the circus lot, and then that way we can incorporate the exit 92, and we're going to go digging around all other parts of Stonington for bits of property that either the town owns or other people own that nothing seems to be happening with. So that's my view, but I think other people should say what they think as well, and then we'll.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, we could,
Yeah.
if somebody from the group wants to propose a combination, we could vote and look for, it's discussion and hopefully near unanimity on it. Maybe that'll get it going.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, I propose to the group that we combine the circus lot and the former Dow Oil property project as one. And for any discussion in the group.
Agree.
Dave, you want to call a vote?
Well, let's do it this way. Does anybody disagree that doesn't make, or does anybody think that doesn't make sense? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I think that's a yes, Jim. So let's combine those. Should we do the other ones that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think the two mill properties across the street from each other, that makes some logical sense given the location on Mechanic Street and also their general proximity and just what they look like. Similar problems.
Anybody feel that doesn't make sense? I think it's true that we'd be asking the same questions and following the same steps for each of those properties. So we just need an extra column. That's it, and then we can.
Adaptive reuse of mills is a problem not just for this town but for many other towns in New England. And you have it's interesting on the other half of the one on Mechanic Street, you have a success story. So that's the interesting part of it.
Right. Okay, so that one.
Can
Yep.
we make just every mill in general into one category? Would that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Fortunately, the other one got knocked down last year. So
okay. The only other mill I think that falls into that category is the one, and not that it's a stuck property, but the one in Old Mystic by the river is largely vacant, and the owner had an idea they needed to get a zoning change to include residential in the upper floors, and the neighbors were dead set against that. And they withdrew their application because they had so much opposition. So that's another one where we could put that one into this same bucket and connect with the owner of that building and say, how can we help?
Dave, I think that's a great idea. Similar problems.
Yep.
Building's in better condition too.
It's a nice building. It's in the floodplain, which is the biggest challenge it has. Not that.
And it's too small for a big project, which is a challenge that the one in Stillman Avenue had.
They had a good proposal for mixed use, and having the commercial on the first floor, which they have now, and residential on the second floor, where you're above the high tide. But, yeah, they got the opposition to it. Yeah, I guess all the mill buildings are technically in the floodplain, even the thread mill. The first floor is in the floodplain, and you couldn't put a residence in the first floor of the thread mill building, believe it or not. So, any others?
I think Greenway and Streetscape, Dave, potentially a combination. They're right next to each other, have some similar aesthetic challenges in terms of getting endorsement from the public.
Yep, and they're interconnected also. I mean, I know we said put the pedestrian bridge separate, but there's definitely a connection point there also.
I think
So that one, I think we should, go ahead, Jim.
I think a pedestrian bridge being an engineering exercise and a property rights exercise, like getting permissions and easements and surveys and a design and buttresses and heights and elevations is really I think it's geographically the same, but it's a very different problem to solve. I don't know if that's where you're going to go there, Kevin, but.
Yeah, my gut feel is I think that one is quite unique, and we could do something exciting like, pay for a design, start figuring out what you need to do for property rights. And I think that's a separate set of issues that you've got to deal with there than putting it in with the Pawcatuck River Greenway. But I would agree, I think we can put the Greenway and the Streetscape together.
Yep.
And then keep the pedestrian, the bridge separate.
Also, that bridge design or bridge recommendation is a project that probably can be completed in calendar year 2021 to a great degree with some great detail, whereas the Greenway has a myriad of problems that's going to make that a multi-year project.
Very good. Anybody see a problem with combining those two and making that one effort? I don't see any opposition to that. So any others that would be combined? We can combine those. I'll get our list resorted and reordered a little bit better so it makes a little bit easier to read, and we'll make that part of the record of tonight's meeting. As Kevin suggested, what I would like to move on to next is if there is a team leader for each of these. So if we go to the circus lot / doll oil lot, and I think for team leads for those, Jim has the hands down desire to do that. So I guess, Jim, would you want to be the team lead for those?
I'm happy to. My only concern is the next month or so. I do have a lot of knowledge of that lot and some knowledge of the owner of the other one. If somebody else wants to lead it, I'm okay with that. I'd definitely like to be on the team. And I also think that Bill Hobbs, I know he's absent tonight, has a certain passion for the circus lot. I would be surprised if he didn't want to be on it. Maybe reach out to him, even though he's not attending tonight. Is there anyone else who would like to lead that team?
Well, what I can see, what I can suggest is you and I co-lead, Jim, and I can help get started, and then.
Okay, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's right. It's all that project's a little bit of work, but with a definite deliverable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that can happen right there. I know it because of the nature of the guy who owns the doll oil lot, and because of where we are in terms of potential in acquiring that 5.7 acres. That there's a project there. There's a project that can be done.
Yep.
By EC, 100%. It's an exciting project.
Yeah, I think probably next to you, I have the most exposure to both both of those. So that's, I guess, why I suggested maybe I could help with that one. And then when you're freed up with more time, I could step back from it. Does that make sense? So for the Greenway and Streetscape projects, it looks like no one really volunteered for the Greenway to be the lead for that. And for the Streetscape, I think Jim, I think you volunteered to be the lead, and but also Bill did. He's not here.
If it's Greenway, I can't lead that team. I can provide a lot of subject matter help, but
Right.
and I can't vote on it, anything. So, but I'm glad to be on that team, but I probably can't lead it.
Right. Does anybody want to take a stab at leading that? And I'm not gonna, Chris, I'm not gonna pin you up against the wall on it. And I know, you volunteered and stuck your neck out to get started on the first go round, and we kind of.
Well, not that. It's just I don't at the current time. I don't have the time to commit to it as much as.
Oh, gotcha.
I definitely like to help on it, but I'm on other committees now, and I also work about 60 hours a week, so I don't want to shortchange it.
Okay.
That's the.
Yep, understand. Okay, well, let's move on. We'll fit that one, I think. I'll propose that, within the next month or so, I'll sit with Susan and we'll try to come up with a plan of action for how we might get something started on that. I know when we hit the wall with that effort the first time around, and then the pandemic started, so that was a double whammy. But Danielle had thought, would it be more effective to actually have some sort of town endorsed task force? So if Susan and I maybe work a little bit on scoping that out, maybe we can bring that back to the EDC. Does that sound all right, Susan?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. The next one is the TC80. And Kevin, you mentioned that you would like to, or excuse me, not.
Yeah, I'll do that one, Dave.
Okay. And the pedestrian bridge. Again, Jim was interested in leading that, and there wasn't anybody else that said they wanted to lead it.
That's what I'm very passionate about, and I know the river pretty well in that area. So,
would you like to lead that one? I don't think it's something that we would start tomorrow. So maybe when things calm down for you a little bit. I mean,
that one, those two projects are the ones I really were both interested in.
Okay.
But then who's going to do the mills? You can't do them all, Jim.
Yeah, that's a little farther away from me. That's like a quarter mile away from me.
Well, let's.
I'm happy to be on the mills. They just couldn't lead them both and do anything justice.
All right, so
Actually,
the
the
mill,
mills, guys, that's a good project for somebody to work on. It really is. Those mills need a little push.
yep.
And if you walk around those mills, they're a lot bigger than you think. The sites are big. It's a lot of acreage there.
So
25 acres.
So Rich, the mill buildings were actually your number one and number two votes. Would you have an interest in trying to lead a team for those?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem doing it. I was a little hesitant to put lead on many of mine just from a capacity issue, but you know, certainly if there's you know, if we don't have a team lead for it, I'm happy to do what I can for it. It just right now we're in the middle of kind of PPP loans and everything else, so it's a little crazy. But as soon as that gets passed, I'd have a little bit more capacity to be able to work on that.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. I think, you know, that's definitely a good fit. And but the first step is to fill out the charter. You're at liberty then as the team leader to come up with the timeline. So you'll be able to suggest when things might happen. And the other benefit of being the lead is you get to delegate to everybody else to do the work.
That'd be fine too.
So we'll see who's on the team with you on that. I don't see any hands, huh? All right, we're actually doing pretty good. So I think we talked about the housing strategies and the comprehensive zoning update. Those are really driven by the Department of Planning, so we don't really need a team lead for those or a subcommittee. We'll just support to the extent we can. And then the last one is stuck property analysis. So that would be kind of the overview and would capture some of these others. And on that one, Cullen expressed interest in a team lead and Kevin did also.
Yeah, so how about if we ask Cullen to do that one?
Yep.
And I'm happy to be on the team.
Okay.
As am I, Dave.
Okay, John. Beautiful. So I'll talk to Cullen on that. It's funny, he couldn't make it because he had a work meeting that came up and he said, I'll call, you know, can I call you, you know, talk to you later this week to see if I missed anything. So imagine his enjoyment when I tell him that, yeah, he missed getting assigned to team lead. Oh, he'll be psyched for that. All right, so I can summarize what we agreed to here as far as the priorities, how we combine projects, the team leads that said they would take a stab at leading and moving efforts forward. I can send out a charter template. It'll be very simple, but it'll be an opportunity to kind of bring structure, how to eat the elephant approach, where you identify some discrete steps that can be accomplished so we keep moving forward with a timeline. So it's not intended to like have this become everybody's day job, but it's more how can, you know, given that we're a volunteer army and we have other responsibilities, how can we keep inching the ball down the field? And we talked a little bit about how individuals might contribute to some of the efforts that didn't necessarily make the top 10, but would be really, you know, feathers in our cap if the EDC can contribute and members can contribute according to their passion. So I think we have a number of those. I'll reflect those as well with who would be interested in doing that. So that's kind of all I had for tonight. So what I'm going to do now, and this would be the shortest. Kevin first, if he has any other ideas for something I didn't cover that we should have. You think we made enough
Yeah,
progress for?
So Dave, I think what we need to do next is everybody should be at least on one subcommittee, maybe two. So can we go through now and allocate or decide who's going to be working with the team leads on each of these projects?
Right. So what I have is what people voted on their vote. They said what teams they would be interested in. So my suggestion would be that they be included on the roster for that particular team, and they can at that point say, you know, yes, I can, or no, I can't.
Okay. And I assume we didn't end up then with anybody who didn't end up with any of the top rated projects.
Right, and give them an opportunity to join a team.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose then the next question is, what are your expectations? So from the charter, are you going to say we would hope that each subcommittee has met once and worked on their charter before the next meeting?
I would like to have the topic for the March meeting be a review of the charters.
Okay, that sounds good.
And
I suppose
confirming team members and so on. So, you know, everything we've, yep.
Yep. Okay, great. And I suppose just as a separate topic, many of you probably would have received an email this morning that had come from Stonington 1649, had a number of different stories about businesses. We have got a story, actually there's quite a bit coming out over the next few months. So there'll be one on recycling in the Stonington Events magazine. There's some on affordable housing, which Dave and Susan and other people have organised. But what I've asked, each of you to do is to work on that one story that we can have basically warehoused. It can be a draft, and then we'll sort of figure out what's happening at a particular point in time. Sometimes we sort of find out on Friday that we've got a story that's due, at 5 o'clock, and then we can't go and pull a rabbit out of the hat. So if you can all work on your stories and send them in, that would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, I'm going to do a quick round, and if there's any other comments, let's have them out now, and otherwise we will conclude the meeting when we're done with that, and we won't be nearly as long as what we're used to, so you'll have plenty of time for the rest of your evening. Kevin, anything further?
No, nothing else from me.
Jim, any final words of wisdom?
Nope. Good meeting.
Suzanne?
Looks good. I'm curious to see a bigger chart next time,
Okay.
so I can read it easier.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'll do that. I'll make sure of that. Rich, any final comments?
Nope, I'm all set, thanks.
All right. Virginia?
No final comments.
Pete?
No comments. This was good. Nice job.
John?
No, this is very good. I'm good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Chris?
All set, Dave. Thanks.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn and thank everyone for coming.
Second.
Have a good night.
All
guys.
right.
Approved. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Bye.